Hello, Cosmic Witches, and welcome back to another episode of the Divine Gossip Girls with me, Maggie, and Carly and Sophie as your hosts. Today, we want to talk about childhood spiritual experiences. I know personally for me, I didn't come from a super woo-woo spiritual family, but definitely now looking back, there are some pretty big signs that I was fairly connected, intuitive, and psychic. And I really just think that those maybe, were shut off. I didn't believe in them. And I kind of went away from these gifts. I went away from these experiences and then somehow found my way back. And I feel like that's the case for all of us, whether that's something small that was just like a little collection that you like to do, or something bigger like actual psychic and intuitive gifts or past life memories or something like that. There's definitely signs in most children that they are still really connected to the divine, really connected to what is other than just our human selves in this worldly life. So we just thought we would chat today about some experiences looking back at our childhood, and we would love to hear some of yours as well. Feel free to send us a message or tag us in a little story sharing your own spiritual experience when you were a child now that you're looking back. So that's all I have for you today. We're going to jump right into the episode and talk all things spiritual childhood. Hey, Cosmic Witches! Divine Gossip Girls here, your one and only source into the spiritual happenings of the cosmos.
Ever wonder what this month's energy will have in store for you? What the planets and stars are even up to? Or if the universe can just help you catch a break already?
Well, lucky you, because we have all the spiritual secrets to tell. Get ready to sip on your weekly dose of divine tea.
All right, ladies, I think I'm going to start it off light at the beginning of the episode rather than being like, I was psychic as a child, or some crazy experiences that I have to share later on. But I'm just going to start it off really, really light and fun and say that I was so obsessed with rocks as a child. Like, I have probably still in like my mom's junk drawer or something, like, unless she just threw it out, which is also very likely. I used to collect literally like pebbles from the playground. I remember there was one that I was like, it looks like a watermelon because it has green and pink on it. And I was obsessed with these little rocks, and I would have rock collections that were literally just like, yeah, pebbles from the playground. I think I took one from like my cousin's fish tank, and just I was so drawn to the energy of crystals. And then working at a crystal shop actually was when I had my big spiritual awakening as an adult when I was in university. And so I just think it's really funny to look back and be like, yeah, I was drawn to the energy of rocks and crystals before I really even understood it.
I too, Maggie, I love that you mentioned energy and just being drawn to kind of things with energy, because I was a super intuitive child. Like, I could just feel a lot of energy, and I thought I was just really anxious. But now reflecting back on it, I'm like, oh wow, I'm an empath and picked up on a lot of energy. And I remember going to a therapist when I was like 11, and I told her, I was like, I just can enter into a space and I start to get really anxious. Like, it could just be like a house or an environment with a lot of people. And she was like, oh, like, it's anxiety. And yes, like, that makes sense, because it's like we feel into the energy. And I remember there was one of like, I used to go to this horse farm growing up. It was my dad's cousins, and we would spend the summer at their house. And their house was like old. Half of it, I think, was built in like the 1800s, and then half of it was like newer. And the part that was like, part of it got burned down basically, but the basement and the cellar was all the same. And okay, I'm about to get really woo here, but I remember just going into that house and I would always feel so much energy. Like, both my sister and I were always like kind of scared to be alone in this house, but it was just because it had a lot of energy and we could feel it, and especially in the basement as well. But I remember one time there was like I don't know, they told me, because they were veterinarians, they owned this clinic, they were like, go downstairs and like get these samples from the basement freezer. And I was like, okay, got it. And I went down there, and I kid you not, I was like down there getting it, and I heard so clearly someone say something to me. It was like, come here, or like it was just a very clear voice of a woman. And I was like, what? And was forever just freaked out of that basement. But it was just like I could feel the energy even before that experience happened. I was like, I felt anxious going into that house. And I just thought I was a really anxious child. But I recognize now that it was just me picking up on the energy, the things that I couldn't see, the somatic parts of being a human and the universe. And so I think that's pretty normal though in a lot of children to have those experiences of feeling.
Yeah, definitely. Something that came through there that I experienced that I had when I was a child is obviously I am a triplet. So for anyone who doesn't know, I have two brothers that are the same age as me. And I remember as you were saying that, that experience, Carly, was I was at a park when I was younger, and this wasn't me, this was like my brother Chris, and I remember being at this park with my friends, and I was on this like tire swing, and we were like going back and like putting your feet in like the inside of the tires and like swinging your head back, and I fell and like banged my head and like began to take a fit, like I was taking a fit, and all my friends thought I was like taking the piss. Like I was just like having a laugh, but I was actually taking a fit. And I remember waking, like obviously coming back around, and like 2 minutes later, my brother made my mum come to the park because he sensed something was wrong. He was like, I just want to go and see who's at this park. Like I just have a feeling like I need to go and see who's here. And he came and like walked into the park just as like I just fainted. And I was like, that is so mad, because he had that like connection of like something's not right.
That like intuition of, oh, I need to go there.
Yeah. Which is mad. Obviously, that wasn't me, that was my brother, but like that's what came through when you were saying that. And I was like, oh my God, I remember that. And I didn't know if it was like a twin thing, a triplet thing, or
I think that so many kids like are just connected, but they always say there's the like twin
Yeah.
tuition or whatever, right? And as a triplet, maybe you guys have some of that of you can just especially as kids feel each other's energies. And I
Yeah.
definitely think like so much is being awakened in me as we're talking about childhood. I was like, I have a couple stories, and I'm sitting here now thinking, being like, I was a weird freaking little kid. I was doing things. I remember I was on a school trip, and I don't know if you guys did this, but a lot of kids would be like, you need to hold your breath and like close your eyes and whatever when you go through a graveyard so spirits don't get inside of you. And people were doing that. And I always thought, I was like, oh, the idea of spirits is so interesting. And I don't know where I ran with this idea of spirits. I don't know where it would have come from, because it definitely wouldn't have been from like reading things. Like I was quite young. But my first house, I moved when I was in the third grade. So that would have been, maybe I was like 8, and I moved halfway through the year. So I was pretty young in my like original house, and I swear that house was haunted. I've told my mom this so many times. I'm like, that house was haunted, because subconsciously every time I read like a book and it's kind of paranormal and it's talking about a haunted space, my mind pictures like a version of my basement of that house that like fits that space. And I just can see it so clearly, and I really do think that space was haunted. But I remember like taking my friends at school on like an expedition to the back corner of our schoolyard and being like, we're digging these areas, we're appeasing the ghosts, like and I was, where did I get that? I was 7. And I was like, we have to do this, we're working with the ghosts. And like, who knows if I just was being wildly imaginative, but I was clearly working on some energy. Like I was clearly intrigued by this idea of paranormal, and then I just lost it. Like when I was, you know, after I moved, especially, I was like, yeah, that's gone. But even as a kid, the idea of like a graveyard always intrigued me. So I was fascinated by that idea. And now as a psychic medium is something that like came to me like even later in my spiritual awakening. I think, I don't know, that's really funny. And I wasn't even thinking of that until you were talking about like being a little kid and going and sensing energies. And I was like, yeah, I was this outgoing kid who's like telling all my friends like we need to appease the ghosts.
I'm just picturing this and I actually love it so much. Oh, that's beautiful. That's, yeah, what an
That's
experience.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
I mean, I'm like reflecting back on it now. I'm like, children are actually so great. Like, so I nanny two little girls, and there's one girl that I'm like, you are a witch. I know you're a witch. Like, she will play this game, and I just have so much fun with her because, well, I have like crystals in my cars and stuff, and she's always so drawn to them. She loves crystals and rocks and all the things. She kind of reminds me of Maggie, honestly, but, she loves to play this game where I'll think of a color and like send it to her, and like, we're just playing a game. You remember playing those games as children where it's like, think of a color and guess it. She guesses the color right every time. Like, I'm literally like, okay, I'm setting it to you, and she's like, I'm feeling it. Wait, I got it. And then she'll say it. And I'm like, of course you did. Because children are just very much connected to that. It's like the veil for them is thinner. Their mind isn't fully developed yet. That part of your brain that doesn't develop until you're like 7 is still like developing. So I feel like your connection to those things is just way more intense. And also you're more in your somatic body. You're playing, you're working with like the earth and stuff. And these girls go to some sort of like hands-on school where it's more like a somatic experience for them. So I think that just nurtures that side of them that's like more intuitive versus like very logical in the mind. So it's just super interesting. But yeah, I feel like for me, one thing too as a child was I remember, and I would take so much pride in this. Like, I remember feeling so good about myself whenever this would happen. But my parents would be struggling to think of names like, oh, like, whose name is it? And then I would say a name and it would be the right name. And I have a very vivid memory of like, I don't know, I think I was upset with my parents. I was probably like 4 or 5. This is one of my earliest memories. But they were all having dinner at the table and I was in the living room. Like, is the living room's dark and I was just sitting alone. I think I was mad. And my parents were at the dinner table and they were talking. They're like, oh, what's her name? Like, I can't remember what her name is. And I just threw out the first name that came to my mind. And they were like, oh my God, that was the name. And I was like, oh, crazy. And I just felt so accomplished. I was like, wow, I just did that. But I was like, what? But it was just like those kind of intuitive nudges, those weird things would always come through.
I think as children, it's just like played off as imagination or chance or, just maybe even a heightened learning ability or something. I think thinking back, I had a wicked memory. I mean, I still do for memory games and things like that. Short-term memory of like remembering where I put my keys, not there, but having to memorize and do stuff like that, I've always been absurdly good at it. Even I'd be like 4 years old and I'd be beating my mom at those like memory games. Um, and I always just thought, oh, maybe I just have a great memory. But I also think maybe it's just that intuition of also just trusting my gut. I'm pretty sure I remember it, there and trusting that intuition. But I would also do similar things to you, Carly. Like this one time, I think I was three years old, and my mom was just like watching me, and then I looked up at her and I was like, Auntie Sandy's calling. And she pretends to pick up a phone like with her hand, like does the little phone symbol with her hand. She goes, oh, hello, Auntie Sandy. And then all of a sudden the phone starts to ring and she picks it up and it was my aunt. And she goes, Maggie just said you were calling and then you called. And it freaked my aunt out completely. She was like, what is going on? And I didn't even know this. My mom told me this once I started being like, yeah, I think I'm a psychic medium. I'm doing these readings and this is what's happening. She goes, well, you did that when you were a kid. I'm like, why was this not more thought about? I don't know, it was just, oh, Maggie's doing this imaginative thing. Oh, it must have just been by chance. What a weird coincidence. And I think we do that a lot with children. Oh, what a strange coincidence. And we don't tell them like, no, you should listen to that.
Yeah, it's very interesting how we are just told to kind of cut it off or block it off. It's like anything that is outside of the logical mind is just a coincidence. It's just, out of nowhere that this thing happened. But I think it's quite interesting the more that you start to tap into your spirituality and come back to your intuitive abilities, you start to almost connect back to those things that you did as a child. It's like you just forgot that that was possible for you to be intuitive and kind of have that precognition of things, or just be able to feel into the energy of spaces. Because now, like going into spaces, I usually can feel things or I'll like know before something happens. But those things were things that we would experience often as children. And I think a lot of us have also blocked off those memories. Like I have so many like faint memories of things like that happening, but it's also, I feel like because we were just told it was coincidence, or we were just told to brush it off, we don't see it as significant. So we just were kind of like told, like we forgot it. We didn't hold on to those memories. So I feel like a lot of people, even as you're listening to right now and you're like trying to remember, oh, did I have those memories? Like, did anything happen for me? I'm sure we all have had super spiritual experiences as children. It's just, was it looked at as something that would have been a core memory, or was it just brushed off by the people around you, so you brushed it off as well?
I'm so glad that you said that, because I feel that. Like I feel like as you guys are talking, like nothing really was coming through for me. Like I feel like I have like just pushed them away, or like blocked them off, or just like not allowed myself to remember them. And I don't know if that's because of others, or because I was like taught not to trust in myself, and block off my intuition. So like I can't I've forgotten any of those experiences, because when I like kind of try to tap into it, like nothing really comes up. Like I remember when Carly brought this talk, it was Carly that wanted to bring this conversation to the table. The first thing that came to mind, was that when I was younger, I used to like go to sleep, and like I'd be like fading into sleep, and all of a sudden these thoughts of like death would arise, and what happens after we die, like where do we go, is that it? Like then I would just get into this spiral of like anxiety and fear of like, just one day I'm not going to be here. And like, what's the fucking point? Like, what's the point? And then I'd go down to like my mum, and she'd be like sitting, and it'd be like 10 p.m. at night. I'm like young, trying to get to sleep for school in the morning. And I'd just be like crying my eyes out, but not able to like articulate why I'm crying, because it sounds so fucking mad.
I think that as children, we have been saying, you get told, oh, it's just your imagination. You get told to block it off or whatever. But I think also trauma, and like once the trauma of real world, like whether that's big T trauma or little t trauma, when it comes in, that's when, those human experiences and that human fear and that human ego come in and take the place of the openness and the curiosity of the spiritual. And because you came into the world in a fairly traumatic way, rather than being open and being like, I'm looking through this veil and I'm close with spirituality because I'm still really in touch with my soul, you came in the world, like you can share a little bit more about it, so because it's your story to tell, but you came into the world in the hospital for a very long time. And so of course that human fear of death was always on your brain from the moment you were born. And so you came into the world with that trauma, that human trauma, that maybe blocked it off so that you weren't as openly spiritual and tapped in as a child. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist inside you. It just means that human life came in and stopped it a lot faster than most.
Literally. No, 100%. So for anyone who doesn't know, I had or have an underlying heart condition. So when I was born, I didn't have a pulmonary artery, and I had holes in my heart. So I spent the first like 3-4 months in hospital. And then at 5 years old, I had like major open heart surgery. And obviously from the ages of 0 to 7, like that's when you are like, you're this open channel that you're a sponge, and like that's when things are most like alive and you're most intuitive. And obviously, like you said, Maggie, is like I faced a lot of trauma through those first few years of my life. And as I was sat there, I was like, is it because like somebody's closed me off to this, or is it because of the trauma that I had went through that has blocked off these intuitive or these memories because of what I experienced as a young child? So obviously going through that like trauma of like my heart condition, and also just like trauma within the family dynamics as well, and different things like that. And I feel like it has blocked off a lot for me. And I feel like as I'm like returning back to my like intuitive gifts, I feel it's taken me a little bit longer because of the healing that I am having to do to tap back into that like part of me, because it was kind of dimmed from the get-go, from the moment I like stepped into this world. It was kind of like taken away in a sense, and I am slowly beginning to return back to that like innate intuitive spiritual like part of me, but it's just taken a lot longer because of like the depth that my trauma lies. Does that make sense?
I mean, it makes so much sense. And I think a lot of people can relate to that as well. If, you're sitting here and you're like, I don't feel like I'm intuitively connected at all. I don't feel like I have these intuitive abilities. And it's really just because a lot of your intuition lies within the body, because it's what you experience outside of the mind. And so many of us have lived our entire lives in our minds, or our first memories are very like mental or physical because of, conditioning or trauma or things that make us feel more safe within the mind and the ego versus in the body. And it takes time to allow yourself to come back to your energy. And I don't think there's any rush to it. There's no timeline to when you begin to connect more, but everyone has intuitive abilities, and I think that that's a beautiful thing to recognize, and everyone experiences them in different ways. Like some people may feel very called to nature, and like when they're in nature they can feel their body connecting to the plants and the animals, and if you hug a tree you can feel its energy, or maybe you experience it in precognition of being able to know things before things happen, or maybe you experience it as just like deep feelings when you enter into certain spaces, or you for the first time meet certain people. Those things that I'm sure you had as a child. Like I'm even thinking about like there were certain people that I remember I met. Like my dad had a coworker that he hated, and I met him in person for the first time. And I was like, I hope you're not this, whatever his name was. Like I just straight up said, like, I hope you're not Jeff. I don't like you. And then it was him, but it wasn't even like that my dad said it. It was like I genuinely had a bad vibe from this guy. And then I think a couple weeks later this man was fired. Like I just did not like him when I met him. But think about the amount of people that you didn't really enjoy as a child, that you were forced to give hugs to, you were forced to be nice to. It's like those intuitive feelings towards people started to be blocked off by being told that you just need to be compliant and you just need to always do what other people want of you. You have to kiss that relative. You need to give them a hug, even though you know that you don't enjoy them. So it's like even those feelings too, I feel that you were very connected to as a child. You started to block off your emotions and your feelings, which are such a somatic, intuitive, spiritual gift, is having emotions. And a lot of us started to learn how to block that off from the get-go. So it's like, bam, and now you're told that you just need to be nice to everyone and love everyone, even though, yes, like you can, but you also have to validate the fact that you may not enjoy certain people or that they're giving you a weird vibe. Maybe stay away from them.
And I like how you said, like, we are all intuitive people. Like, we all are. Like, we all have strong intuitions, but there's things that have closed it off. And, like, our intuitions may be more suppressed than others. And it's just allowing those layers to, like, come up to allow your intuition to, like, shine brighter. And as you were talking, I remember Maggie sent me a message that one of her friends messaged her being like, Sophie is so in denial at how intuitive she is. Like she's gonna like recognize it one day and like she's not gonna know it's her. And I know that I am intuitive, but I can recognize that these traumas and experiences as a child have like stopped me from like trusting in myself and trusting in like what I have to give. And I've been on this journey of remembering like my own potential and my own power, because it was like taken away from the get-go and I had to like fight to just survive. So I think it is like it's amazing like how your experience as a child like gets like blocked, and you then become on this, you then kind of like align on this journey of like remembering those parts of you and allowing those parts to start shining brighter and brighter, because I've been on this healing journey with my heart and rewiring, or like kind of like healing my relationship with my heart, and not seeing it as such like this thing that has blocked me or stopped me or whatever it is, but actually like the fact that I'm here is a miracle. Like my heart is a miracle. Like the chances of me being here, like I was supposed to have another operation when I was 9 years old, and I'm now turning 28 this year, and I'm still beating, and I'm still fit, and I'm still like alive and doing all the work that I'm doing. I'm still here, and like I truly believe that my heart and my intuition has gotten me to where I am, and being and recording these podcasts with Maggie and Carly and running Or Elevation, doing the work that I'm doing, because I allowed myself to start tapping back into those parts of myself. So return back to your inner child, return back to your intuition, let it lead the way more often.
And as much as we're saying, like, oh, we get blocked off as children, like, we're so in connection and then we get blocked off, I think there's also things that we can pinpoint back to our childhood. At least I can. That also awakened things within me, but I just didn't realize, but it kind of like planted the seed. Like, the seed was planted when I was a child, and then once I was able to come back to it on my own, then I could water it. So, like, for example, I've spoken about this on the podcast before when we talked about past lives, my mom talking about the fact that she has past life memories and she can remember her past life, or one of her past lives. And that really planting the seed, so that when I came across the concept of past lives again, it felt so familiar and intriguing to me. And also just the idea of the universe. So when I was growing up, for some of the time I was growing up, we would go to church. I mean, my church was a little different than most, I think. I think I was I don't even know, Presbyterian? I don't know the difference. No, that's not what I was. But I was some religion that wasn't Catholic, but like one of those branches, you know? But the funny thing was, is I had like my pastor or whatever, but then his wife would also do sermons, and she was also a pastor, but she was Jewish. And so I just went to a very different church. We like sang all the hymns, like we did just a lot of fun things. There was a kids choir, so that's really why I went to church, because I'm so musical. I just wanted to sing and like be part of the choir. But we went to this church, but we would do the choir, and we would do like plays at Christmas, and we'd say, oh, my aunt came the one time, and I would be like, oh, like granddad, Nana and granddad, come and watch. But my granddad did not like church. And it was because I'm pretty sure it was because my mom listens to our podcast, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's because his family was not super well off, and they made them sit at the back, or like stand at the back of the church when they went to church, because they couldn't put as much money in the collection tin. And my granddad thought, screw that. God doesn't care how much money you have. Like, he doesn't care if you're putting money into the collection tin. He wouldn't want you to, segregate people on how much money they make, right? And he really didn't like that discrimination within the church of the wealthy being like put way up on top. And so he had very strong beliefs, but he would say to me, like when I was a child, he would say, I don't believe in God, but I believe that there is a higher power of some sort. And once then I came back to the term of the universe, I remember thinking, oh, like this really feels right to me. And it also brought up that seed that was planted of there's some sort of higher power, because I think there's energy in the world and things we don't understand. I just don't know what that is. Right? And he would have dreams of his mom who passed away, and he would tell me these stories that were actually, when I think back at it, a lot more spiritual. But all it did was plant the seeds. And once I came into my own beliefs and my own practice and my own gifts, it was like, oh, and there's that evidence from someone that I really respect.
Yeah, I love that so much. Yeah, there are like those little nuggets of, I think, spiritual wisdom or insights that we get as children, and we can't really make sense of it in that moment, but something sometimes clicks with us, or we're like, oh, interesting. That once we're older, we can, and we start to awaken, it's like, oh my God, that made so much sense that that person saw it that way. Or for me, it was a lot of my family in Mexico was very Catholic, but at the same time, the energy there is more like spiritual. A lot of my family, I mean, my grandma, honestly, she was the most religious of my whole family. I think the rest of my mom's sisters were just super spiritual. But my mom like loved the Ouija board growing up. Her and her sisters would just mess around with energy. One of her sisters is like a full-on witch. But so there's like that spiritual energy that always ran in my family in Mexico. But growing up in like a predominantly like Western society in the US, where what cannot be seen is considered unreal or fake, it was really hard for me to believe in any of that. And like my mom would really lean into like natural remedies of like using the earth to help heal our bodies. And my brain was like, oh, that's not real because it's not a pill. It's not based on science or whatever. But as I started to grow older in my spiritual awakening, I started to understand that deep connection to the earth and to energy, and then everything within my lineage. Like I understand I have that ancestral energy of healing energy within me. And I believe those seeds were planted within my childhood and within my lineage too. Like think about all of our ancestors. Like we all have ties to some sort of ancestor that came from way, 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 way back. And then there were healers, and there were people that were working with the earth, or people that were working more in those regards. And like we have that in our blood, like Nordic.
I think my great grandmother was a palm reader or something.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool.
I don't know. I'll have to ask my mom about it because she kind of has told me about it before. But just to quickly interject on that one note, keep going. But I was just going to say, I think that my great grandmother was a palm reader.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, if you start to look down your lineage, there is most likely roots somewhere in either like a healer or someone that was more at some point like somewhat spiritually connected. I mean, there is like a mixture of all of our roots, but I think a lot of us do have ties and like remembering who we are past the human ego side of it all. But I think with that being said, we are going to wrap up this episode. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you found some joy in listening to this conversation, and maybe were able to remember some of your own spiritual or intuitive experiences as a child, or if not, enjoyed.
We'll have to do another episode on it because I feel like we both even touched on things, Carly and I especially, of experiences when we were a kid that we didn't even share in today's episode. So maybe we can find out more about our past. Maybe we can do looking into some ancestral things and where our roots are more, and talk about some more stories from when we were children, but also some roots and ancestral stuff as well. So if you like the sound of that, please let us know. Maybe on Spotify, I think you can do polls. So maybe when this one comes out, I can put a poll on Spotify. And if you're interested, even if you're not interested, let us know. Use the poll because we want to make episodes that you are interested in and that speak to you. So if ancestral healing and ancestral information and even just like more fun stories like this is something you're interested in, go vote on that if you're listening on Spotify, or send us a little message, because we want to make content that also you want to hear, and we can chit chat about anything spiritual. We just love talking and, and getting spiritual.
Talking about the spiritual things. All right, loves, if you enjoyed, make sure you leave a review on whatever platform you're listening to. Make sure to send to a friend or a loved one that may enjoy this conversation. And we will chat with you all in the next episode. Bye.